that what you're talking about with these glasses?
But that's static.
This is
See,
static.
this is not driven by the brain.
Okay, so you're talking about something that...
Well, for example, if we had that hooked up to my electroencephalograph, and when your brain was producing too much slow frequency, those lights would go on and drive it down. And as soon as it came down, the lights would go off.
I see. So these are... They sort of do the same thing, but they don't turn on and off. You're not...
And they're not driven by the brain.
Okay.
Okay.
But am I getting on the idea a little bit? Because that's what you do. You'd have some sort of lights. You did this to me one time. You had
lights or
flashing,
sound.
and I could keep my eyes closed, too.
Yeah, lights or sound or, for adults, microamperage stimulation and so forth.
So is this the kind of thing you do for somebody who is highly drugged or is in a coma or
yes,
vegetative state type of thing?
Yes, when people can't volitionally participate, like make the trains go around, we use brain drivers. And we treat very severe autistic kids, for example, Alzheimer's, folks that are not able to participate, very young dementia. Children, dementia, coma. My clinic was the principal developer of these techniques in North America, and there are a wide variety of them, and they all work very efficiently. What's particularly effective with brain driving, by the way, is what we call tasking. If you have a kid who can't read, we put the electrodes over the reading, the centers that are implicated in reading and information transfer and so forth.
So this is something on your brain.
That's correct.
There's a place there.
And they would have goggles like that, and they would have headsets. And we would be measuring these areas that are inefficient because the child's having difficulty reading. And when the brain is working in an inefficient fashion, we would turn on the stimulation to drive it into more activated, efficient.
Is this driving the whole brain, or is it just driving
very specific? Where that
driving
electrode,
the place where you got the electrode?
The place where you have the electrode.
But there's no holes drilled. It's not attached. It's just sitting there with a little bit of gel or something.
That's right. And then we have a technician, or our educational educational specialist, coaching the child on how to read and the various things that they do. And Mari has had some, well, as you know, some remarkable.
She helped Mitchell, my son, with his spelling, because he could spell ancient 7 times in a row, 7 different ways wrong. And now he can spell ancient and a whole bunch of other words. It's wonderful.
Well, she's taught kids to read in 6 or 7 sessions because it's so efficient.
Now we've done number 1. That's number 2.
Yeah. Number 3 are things like the light glasses, things that you take home and give yourself treatments like harmonics. I actually have a harmonic here we might play with a little later.
Okay. Well, you've got that one
like
that you put on your ears and put it on your belt, and that
cranial
cures
stimulator.
depression. And
That's
stuff.
correct, yes.
And I know somebody that worked for amazingly. Just severely depressed, and you talked for an hour and put this thing on. They took it home, and 3 days later they were happy again like a clam. Okay, you brought a tape.
By the way, that's all FDA registered and compliant stuff, equipment, so that it carries the same kind of research designations that an antidepressant would.
Okay, but it's drug-free.
Absolutely.
And it works real fast if it works, right? No, does it ever not work?
Oh, sure, of course. And that's the beauty of assessing these things before we prescribe them. Before we prescribe something like a harmonic, we put them through a test in terms of we look at what the brain is doing. And if the harmonic is effective in changing the brain the way we want it, then we prescribe it. And there's no guesswork. We know exactly what it's going to do.
Okay. Now, once a year, I think only once a year, you have a public seminar and you invite anybody to come down. Usually there's 100, 200 people there. And we have a recording of the last one you did. And we're not going to play that now because we're going to try and do that next week or the week after. I don't think you're here next week, are you?
No. 2 weeks from tonight.
2 weeks from now. But you also, at those seminars, always play a tape of a lady that phones up and can't talk, or you can virtually hardly understand her at the start, and at the end she's just talking. Do you want to play that tape? You've got it with you.
Sure. Now, this is an example of the power of neurotherapy. This is a woman who had a brain injury, and the first clip you're going to hear is this woman calling to try to make an appointment. I saw her once, and she is calling to make an appointment. The second clip you're going to hear is the same woman leaving a message on my answering machine, asking again to make an appointment. So this is called telephone answering machine research.
Okay, and what's the difference in the time between these? 5 treatments, 6 treatments?
10 sessions.
10 sessions. Okay.
10 sessions.
So.
And for the listeners, pay attention to the clarity of the voice here. Okay, and here we go.
Dr. Swingle, I'm not going to be able to make a 9 o'clock appointment. We're still digging out our parents' watching. I'll call you down and make appointments for next week. Bye.
And now 10 sessions later.
Dr. Swingle, this is I'm calling to make an appointment for next week. Thursday at 11 o'clock. If that's not good, could you give me a call back and let me know which would be a good time? Thank you.
The voice is clear, the thought is clear, the concept is clear.
Right.
And now you have another tape too you were going to play, I think. Maybe.
That's one of the harmonics.
That's one of the harmonics, okay. And that's one of the ones that calms the savage beast, for instance?
No, this is the one that we use for ADD kids. It is a stimulant.
So that's the one you gave my son, so that he could...
That's right. It replaces Ritalin, methylphenidate, Adderall, and all of those other poisons that we put into children.
So let me make this clear. I had a son that could not write an essay.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't remember a paragraph if he read it. If he was writing an exam, by the time he finished reading the question... Now, one son couldn't spell but could understand everything. The other one could spell anything but couldn't understand it. And you gave him this harmonic. And we went down to London Drugs and bought a tape player. And the very first time he used it, which was 4 days after you gave it to him, he wrote a 300-word essay, almost letter perfect, just exactly what he was supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
He wrote it in less than an hour, and it used to take 7-8 hours for him to write a 300-word essay, because either his mother or I would sit there and say, what about this word? Yeah, that's okay. What about this word? Yeah, that's okay. We would, in fact, write it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the kind of thing you're talking about.
That's right.
So what does this do?
What this...
8 or 9 treatments later, you didn't need the harmonic anymore.
That's right, yes.
So what
Now,
does it do?
a lot of college students use these harmonics to when they study, because it just makes their studying more efficient. They don't have any particular problem. It just makes the brain really efficient. A lot of CEOs use these sorts of things to deal with mid-afternoon slump, things of that nature. And what it does is it stimulates the brain so that if you're having excessive amount of slow frequency amplitude, which is what your son had, that was interfering with his trying to concentrate. If you remember when I did the assessment, I said to Peter, you read, you got the end of the paragraph, can't remember what you read. And the reason for that is when we asked him to task, that is to read something, his theta went through the roof. Mm-hmm. And if his theta goes through the roof, theta is a brainwave associated with sleep and daydreaming. And if you're trying to concentrate, then this theta amplitude is coming up, of course you can't remember. Well, so what this harmonic does is suppress the amplitude of that.
And it just does it with sound. You call it sound health.
That's right.
And you invented it.
That's correct, yes.
Tell the story. I mean, we've told the story before, but everybody's not going to watch everything. How did you invent it?
I did a lot of work in subliminals when it was very unpopular to do so. The professional associations.
Now, subliminal again, because Richard says we got to explain everything.
Oh, subliminal means that it is the sound level is below your ability to detect it.